Joe, with this impeachment inquiry, we now have the whistleblower's lawyers saying that the whistleblower will answer written questions from House Republicans under oath, under penalty of perjury. The Republicans are saying that's not good enough. But is this a step maybe in the right direction to actually getting the whistleblower to testify?
Who knows? The Democrats are going to run the process. And by the way, all these crazy rules that the Democrats pass don't give the Republicans anything because they can be overruled by Chairman Schiff. If he decides he doesn't want a witness, doesn't want a question asked, he can still overrule them. So this is a farce. This is constitutional anarchy, what the Democrats are doing. They've decided that with just a year before a national election for a president, they're going to impeach him and remove him from office. Well, they may very well impeach him in the House, but the Senate is not going to remove him from office. What this is all about, and has always been about, is to dirty up the president for the election. People should not be under the illusion that a real impeachment process is underway. This is all politics. The Democrats in the House are nothing more than political assassins, and they are anarchists. And the American people are either going to wake up and see what this is and throw the bums out of the House, or they're not. So we'll see what happens. This is all politics now. And by the way, this whistleblower, Eric Ciaramella, is his name. It's been published all over the place by everybody. A CIA analyst, quote unquote. If he thinks they're going to accept written questions, his lawyers are delusional. This guy should testify. We should have pictures of him. We should know who he is. I've seen a couple of pictures of him on Daily Caller and elsewhere. So the notion now, let's just remember what they're saying. You can impeach a president and theoretically have him removed from office on the testimony of an anonymous whistleblower who worked at the CIA and worked for Joe Biden. You have to be a lunatic to believe that this is a real process. And yet, when you look at the polling numbers around the country, there is some gaining support for impeachment. Now, what does that tell us? It tells us that the Democrats have developed a strategy for convincing the people of something that is false. This is truly the Soviet Union.
You know, I always, as we've gone through this, Joe, I often try and contextualize it with other presidents and the way that they comported themselves in their presidencies. You think back to George W. Bush. I mean, he gets us into the war in Iraq, which obviously looks like a very bad decision in retrospect, of course. And Nancy Pelosi didn't even attempt to impeach George W. Bush. You had Barack Obama in office, Americans being killed during his presidency. Not a single Republican, for as antagonistic as that relationship was, ever attempted to get him impeached. Yet here we are with Trump because he makes a phone call that explores Washington's corruption, impeaching him?
Well, first of all, the phone call is perfectly proper. Remember, the president is the chief executive officer of the United States. He is the chief foreign policy officer of the U.S., the chief law enforcement officer. There's nothing improper about that phone call. The Democrats are making it up as they go along. They are saying that everything is improper that used to be normal. Of course they didn't want to impeach George Bush or Barack Obama. They're trying to impeach Trump because they think they can, and because they think it's of political benefit to them to do so. And because, more important than all of that, they are fearful that if Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies, he gets another nominee. This is all about the Supreme Court. They'll never say it. They'll never talk to you about it. But remember, the left lives for the courts. Just look how they've used the courts to thwart the president every step of the way, with judges in Oregon, San Francisco, in California, and in the West. This is about controlling the country and controlling public policy through the courts. They fear that if Trump gets a second term, Ginsburg will die or she will retire, and he gets at least one more, maybe two. So make no mistake about it. They have to get him. They have to decapitate him. They have to politically assassinate him. Otherwise, the Supreme Court is lost for 2 generations.
They're saying that the president asking for Ukraine to investigate Burisma Holdings, Joe Biden's son's company that he was on the board of, that he is, doing this because he's a political opponent and now he's trying to influence the outcome of an election. This entire process, though, is about influencing the outcome of an election. But given what they're saying, shouldn't then Sanders and Warren recuse themselves from any kind of vote on this because they are getting to vote against their political opponent?
Oh, that's never going to happen. There are no rules for that in the Senate. This is not about right and just. This is all pure politics. What you are watching is the rawest of raw politics. It's about power. The Democrats are doing this because they control the House and they can do it. They fear the president. They fear what a second term means for the courts. They fear this. Now, there is nothing wrong with a quid pro quo in foreign policy. That's what foreign policy is about. That's why the actions of the president in foreign policy are not reviewable by courts. That's why courts don't try to second-guess a president's decision in the area of foreign policy, because it is a power under the Constitution that is committed to only one person, the president, and Congress can change a decision he makes by a law if they choose to do so, and they have done that from time to time. But they're not doing that in this case, because this isn't about the law. This is about when the president said, let's assume for the sake of argument that there was a quid pro quo and a threat in that conversation, which there wasn't according to the transcript. Nothing would be wrong with that legally. A president can say to a foreign leader, look, you want this money?
Right.
Here's what I want you to do. And if he doesn't do it, he doesn't get the money.
Yes.
We've been doing that since George Washington, for heaven's sake.
Yeah, he can condition aid on behaviors, absolutely. Joe, I'm going to ask you about a couple of the deep staters. Former acting CIA Director John McLaughlin on Wednesday of last week, sitting alongside John Brennan, said that he was, quote, grateful for the deep state's role in prompting the impeachment inquiry into President Trump. He said that he's grateful for the deep state. He's signaling the same thing John Brennan basically said last week, that they love this permanent bureaucracy in holding the country together. What is with the trend in that attitude?
Well, it is, in fact, the reality of the federal government today, which is 90% Democrat. They have been emboldened to believing that they have the right to thwart the policy of a sitting and duly elected president by the New York Times and the Washington Post. They've been told that that's okay, including a criminal conspiracy against the President of the United States. Apparently, Mr. McLaughlin, who really has become another political hack, you have to sit back and see what's happening to the CIA right in front of your very eyes. All of these former leaders, Mike Morrell, McLaughlin, Brennan, all of these people laying out in cold terms their disdain for the current president of the United States and their belief in the abuse of power by the Central Intelligence Agency. Well, I would only urge them to be very careful, because the Barr-Durham probe is looking at the heels of Mr. Brennan and Mr. Clapper and Mr. Comey and Mr. McCabe and Mr. Strzok and Miss Page and all the people inside the CIA who cooperated with foreign agencies in a domestic intelligence operation.
Yeah.
Make no mistake about it.
All right.
When Durham went to a grand jury, he did it for one reason. He's going to indict people.
All right, Joe DiGenova, always good to talk to you. Thank you.